Here we are at our Bloom mini press where we're going to bore these 5mm holes in our cabinet sides to hold our drawer guides in place, our hinges. Actually, it's just going to hold the base plate for the hinge, and these holes will also serve to hold our shelf in place. Now once again, the holes are 5mm in diameter and they're spaced 32mm apart. Let me show you how I bored these holes on the Bloom mini press. All right, let me show you the main control panel on the Bloom mini press. This is the main switch. This turns the power on and turns it off. Whenever you're doing any types of adjustments on this, you're adjusting the fence or moving the stops and you've got your hands down here, you want to make sure that you have this turned off. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on now, and let me show you the operation mode. Right now it's set at off. Nothing will happen. If I push the button, nothing happens. If I move it to setup, notice that this little green light came on, and now what will happen is the drill bits will go down, they'll cycle down, but they don't turn. This is very useful when you're doing setup work. You're setting your stops, you're setting the fence, you can just bring it down. It'll put a little depression in your piece of material so you can see if it's in the right place. Then if I move the key over to drill press, now the bits will turn and it will cycle down. When I press the drill press stroke button, that I had to keep my finger on the button until the drill bit got to the bottom of its cut. Then I can let off. If I just push it, it's not going to do anything. And finally, the hold down release is right here. Right now, I can't move this piece of material because watch this down here, when I push the button, these little pneumatic hold downs go down on the piece of material to hold it in place for you so that it doesn't move side to side. Now I can simply release it by turning it to the right, and I can move my piece of material. Now we have 3 adjustments that we're going to make on the machine so that our holes are exactly in the right place. 1 is the fence, 2 are these hold downs, and 3 is the depth of bore. Before we get started boring our holes, we need to make some adjustments on the Bloom mini press so that our hole placement is exactly the way it's prescribed on our plans. And if you notice, we have 44.5mm from the edge for this top hole and 44.5 for the bottom hole. And the holes are 57mm back from the front of the cabinet. So we're going to set a stop on the right side and on the left side. So let me show you how I made that adjustment. Let's take a closer look at the hole boring pattern that the machine made. The Bloom machine bores 7 holes. 1 hole is centered on the fence. So I'm just going to draw in a center line here. And then each hole is 32mm from the other hole. So if we draw a line, I'm just going to draw a line across here, and we'll put a line here, here, and here. This is 32mm, 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 and then our plan required that this hole be 44.5mm from the edge of the cabinet. So adding up our 32mm increments and then our 44.5, we get 96 plus 44.5 is 140.5mm. So I need to set the stop 140.5mm from this center line of the fence. And so this stop right here is set at 140.5 from the center. And I want you to take a look at this little tick mark and then 0 millimeters. Those two marks line up with the center boring spindle. And as I go to my right, you'll notice these numbers 2, 3, 4, those are centimeters. And if we just add a 0 to it, we'll be in millimeters, which is what we're used to working with. So 40 millimeters, 50 millimeters, 60, and so on, until we get over here to our setting of 140.5 millimeters. Now I have to set the stop on the left side of the fence. And I'm also going to set it at 140.5 millimeters. Now I'm doing this so that anyone who walks up to this machine and bores holes can either go left or right. It won't matter. So I've got it set at what I think is 140.5 millimeters. I'm going to run a test piece now and see if it actually is. And I want to show you an alternative way to do the test without actually boring the holes. If you look at the switching area here, we have a main switch. Right now it's on off. Also have an off, a setup, and a drill press switch right here. Right now it's on off. If I put it to setup, what will happen is when I push the button, it will depress the tool, but the bits don't turn. So it won't actually drill holes. It'll just go down and it'll make a little mark in our practice piece. So let me do that for you. You need to release the little pneumatic hold downs after you complete your cycle. So I'll do that. And let's take a look at this. Here's the impression that the drill bit made. And I'm going to measure it and see if it's 44.5 millimeters. And it is. Boy, I really got lucky this time. Both sides I hit it on the first try. 44.5 millimeters. Now we have both stops set so that we can run the piece through either to the left or to the right, but we'll only run it through in one direction. So let me run it through so you can see the rest of these holes, and it'll be interesting to see if the last hole ends up right there where that test bore was. Okay, as you can see, we have one extra hole here, but that's okay. That'll be inside of our rabbit. It won't matter. But the main thing is this hole right here is 44.5 millimeters. All right, so we're just a little over 44.5 millimeters, but it's within a half a millimeter, so that's just fine. Let me show you how I bored these holes. You remember on our first bore, we bored 7 holes, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in order to bore 7 more holes, I'm going to drop this pin in the last hole that I bored and then bore 7 more holes. This pin is exactly 32 millimeters from this outboard bit here. And this pin over here is 32 millimeters from this outboard bit. So it works quite nicely. You could bore, 1,000 holes if you wanted to. You just keep going. All right, now we have our first hole set at 44.5 millimeters from the top, and this hole is set 44.5 millimeters from the bottom. But we still have to set the center of the hole from the face of the cabinet. As you can see here, it's 57 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is adjust this fence. The fence will move forward and backwards, and I'm going to make it an adjustment. Now, there's something that I have to tell you that's special about this particular setup. When we put this 7-spindle head on, the bits are moved forward 32 millimeters from where they normally would be. So if I didn't have this on and I had 3 bits in this machine and I was just going to bore 3 holes at a time, which is what the basic machine will do for you, and I wanted to set the distance from the fence to the center of the bit at 57 millimeters, I would just go to the fence back here and set it at 57 millimeters. But because these bits are set forward 32 millimeters, I have to deduct that and use that on my fence setting. All right, so let me show you how to think about this. Here's the fence. Here's the bit where it would normally be. And I've adjusted, there are 2 bars back here that have calibrations on them that I can read out on, and I can set. There's a little arm back here that I can lock it in place. So for this demonstration, we're going to set it at 57 millimeters. There's 57. Now if we just had the regular bits in and we didn't have this 7-spindle head, we would set back here, we would set it at 57 millimeters. But because this 7-spindle head is set forward 32 millimeters, we need to move the fence forward 32 millimeters so that we end up at 57. All right, so I'm going to go around back, set the fence at 25 millimeters so that these spindles are 57 millimeters from the edge of the fence. Okay, now I've moved around to the back side of the machine so that we can take a closer look at our measuring scale here so that I can show you how I arrived at a fence setting of 25 millimeters. So let's go in and take a little closer look. We have 2 scales, one on each side. We have some little pins here that allow us to move it back and forth. You have to pull those out, and they will go into preset holes. Like right there, it's locked in. But just pull them out and you can move this backwards and forwards. And when you get it set where you want it, you're just going to lock these 2 little lever arms down. So let's set the fence at 0 and take a closer look. If we didn't have this 7-spindle head on, the 3 standard bits would be centered right on the edge, the front edge of this fence. They'd be at 0. But because the 7-spindle head is moved forward 32 millimeters, so now if you look on our sample piece here, you'll see that our bits are 32 millimeters in front of the fence and in front of the edge of our piece of material. So we want 57 millimeters. I'm going to deduct 32 and end up with 25 millimeters. That's what I need to set the fence at. It's 25. So I'm going to do that right now. You want to check both sides and make sure that they both read 25 and then lock it down. Now we can run a test piece. All right, let's measure this and see if we're at 57. And it's right on. The last thing we have to do is to set the bit depth so that it drills the hole 12 millimeters deep. And Bloom has come up with a pretty ingenious little way of getting the hole at exactly 12 millimeters. If you take a look up here, this little reducer here is exactly the depth of our holes, which is 12 millimeters. If we just slip that over this plunger, when we plunge it down, it'll reduce the distance traveled by 13 millimeters. This spindle moves up and down. This is a reducer that's placed on the spindle because of our 7-spindle head. It's actually lower than the bits would normally be, so this reduces the travel. And then if we slip this over the edge, depress the machine, and then what we can do is adjust it so that the bits are just touching the top of our cabinet. That way, when we remove this reducer, the bit will go in exactly 12 millimeters. This setup procedure is oftentimes missed, and that's why we have all of these extra holes in the table, because the depth of cut wasn't set properly. So let me go ahead and set this so that our hole is exactly 12 millimeters deep. I'm going to swing that little arm over. I'm going to depress the head, and then I'm just going to turn this until I'm nice and tight, right to the top. Okay, so you can clearly see that the bit isn't going down far enough. It needs to touch the face of the board. So I'm going to adjust it down a little bit more. That looks just right. Now we're ready to bore the front holes on our cabinet parts. Okay, now we have our front holes bored, and let's just take another look and make sure they're right. 57 millimeters from the front of the cabinet to the center of the holes, and looks like we're 44 and a half. And 44 and a half. Now it's time to bore the back set of holes on the cabinet. And if you'll remember, the distance from the back of the cabinet to the center of the back holes is 93 millimeters. All right, so now we need to set the fence for 93 millimeters, and we know how to do that. We could take 93, subtract 32 millimeters because of our head here, and we'd get 61, and we could just set the fence at 61. A little math involved there. We could do it with this Bloom jig, and we wouldn't have to do any math. If you take a look at this, it's divided up into millimeters, and it starts at 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on, down to 90, and then some increments of 90. And we want to set it at 93, so I'm just going to loosen this up and slide it down and set it at 93 millimeters. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'll set it at 93 millimeters. Now, all I have to do is put this against the fence, loosen the fence up, and move it back until these pins fall into those two holes. Now I'm going to bore some test holes. let's take a look. And it measures 93 millimeters. But there's one last test that I like to perform on this, and that's to see if the hardware itself is actually going to fit. That's the true test. So let's put this on here and see if the holes line up. If you take a look, they actually don't line up exactly. We need to adjust the hole just a little bit forward. We need to come forward just a little bit. So I'm going to readjust the fence. Let's see. Actually, let me set this to 94. So now that we've checked this out, made sure our hardware fits, we can go ahead and bore the holes in the back of our cabinet sides. Now we have both of our cabinet sides ready to go. Top and bottom is almost ready to go. We can install our hardware and put the cabinet together.